Hello there, my name is Triple S, and in this video I'm going to point by point break down and review Season 1, Episode 5 of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Let's begin. Point number 1. So, Baelor makes no mention of borrowing his son Valar's armour, nor is there any mention of Raymond changing the colour of the apple on his shield from red to green, or that Dunk's side will use tourney lances as they are longer than the war lances Aerion's side will be using, meaning that hopefully Dunk's side will hit first with their longer lances and avoid being hit by the other team's shorter lances. I can understand why all this from the Hedge Knight novella was left out from this episode, as it would have taken away from the tension building, and I wouldn't be surprised if Raymond altering his apple sigil to green is mentioned in the next episode, possibly when Raymond and Dunk say their goodbyes. Point number 2. Love the callbacks to previous episodes with Dunk saying he will hunt down Egg with dogs, and Egg shouting to Thunder the phrase he used when training him to charge. Point number 3. While this entire flashback to young Dunk surviving in Flea Bottom is brand new for the show and not from the Hedge Knight, in the third Dunk and Egg novella, The Mystery Knight, Dunk remembers having 3 friends, named Rafe, Ferret and Pudding. All we learn about these 3 is that once they and Dunk stole a head off of an iron spike and went around King's Landing forcing girls to kiss it until it rotted too much. No mention is made of what gender Rafe, Ferret and Pudding were, nor what happened to them before or after Dunk became Arlen's squire. The character of Alistair is also new for the show, and in the credits he's called Alistair City Watchman, and his mate who stabs Dunk in the leg is listed as Goldcloak in the credits, which points to them both being members of the City Watch of King's Landing, also known as the Goldcloaks. Though if this is the case, it's interesting then that Alistair is missing his left hand, which is a punishment for thieves, and he seems to imply he was one when he tells Rafe he used to have quick hands too once. So I find it odd then that he'd be a Goldcloak, as I wouldn't have thought they'd be willing to let a one-handed former thief join their ranks. Maybe he wasn't a thief despite the implication and lost his hand some other way. Or maybe with the Blackfire rebellion going on, the Goldcloaks were hard-pressed to find new members and so had to do it Night's Watch style by recruiting criminals. Point number 4. The battle we see the aftermath of with Dunk and Rafe pillaging the dead was the Battle of the Redgrass Field. The deciding battle of whether Daemon Blackfire, the Black Dragon, one of Aegon the Unworthy's bastards, would be able to march on King's Landing and take the Iron Throne from his Targaryen cousins. Daemon lost, obviously, felled along with his 2 eldest sons by archers led by Brynden Bloodraven Rivers, another of Aegon the Unworthy's bastards. Aegor Bittersteel Rivers, yet another of Aegon the Unworthy's bastards and supporter of Daemon, rallied what was left of the Blackfire forces into a charge against their Targaryen foes, but then Baelor Breakspear and Maekar crushed them between the 2 forces they led, a tactic later immortalised in the song The Hammer and the Anvil, with Baelor as the hammer and Maekar the anvil, which we hear Egg sing in episode 3. Point number 5. The tree-lined path we see Dunk and Rafe walking along is the same road Brienne and Pod rode along in Game of Thrones Season 4 Episode 5, as in these scenes were filmed on the exact same IRL path in Belfast as revealed by showrunner Ira Parker to Business Insider, and this was done as an intentional parallel since Brienne of Tarth is a descendant of Duncan the Tall, as revealed by George R.R. Martin in 2016 at an event called Balticon. Before this, the only clue George gave about Brienne being a descendant of Dunk was in the 4th A Song of Ice and Fire novel, A Feast for Crows, where Brienne has her shield repainted to look like one she saw in her father's armory when she was young, a shield with a tree and a falling star painted on it. Point number 6. The sigil on the shield of the rider Dunk and Rafe hide from, a lamb inside of a golden chalice, seems like it might be a variation on the sigil of House Stokeworth, a lamb holding a golden chalice. Sigil variations are common in Westeros, with Raymond changing his apple sigil from red to green, and Aerion changing the colour of 2 of the heads of the Targaryen 3-headed dragon to yellow and orange. Point number 7. Near the sleeping Arlen, we see a burial mound with a helmet and flowers placed atop it. This is the grave of Arlen's squire, his nephew, who we learned died in the Battle of the Redgrass Field from Dunk in episode 2. This explains Arlen's heavy drinking and why he chose to defend Dunk against the Goldcloaks. He didn't want to see another young boy killed. Point number 8. With the rest of the show looking great with barely noticeable CGI, I will say this shot is the first time I've noticed it looking obviously fake, with what seems to be a number of elements layered on top of each other. The hill road, the water, King's Landing and the land in the distance all being separate layers combined together in a way that looks uncanny to me. Though for all I know, the hill road, the water and the land in the distance could be one layer, but it all just still looks unnatural to me. Obviously, King's Landing is fake, but so too are the boats on the water, with them going against the wind as evidenced by the direction of the waves and the clouds, whilst having their sails up somehow. This really just comes down to a nitpick, as you'll mainly be focusing on Arlen and Dunk, but it's just something I noticed myself that took me out of the scene a little bit. Point number 9. Arlen's drunken singing is actually in the Dothraki language, and David J. Peterson, the conlang specialist who has worked on all 3 A Song of Ice and Fire TV shows, posted the translation to his Archive of Our Own account, and with it being a Dothraki song, it obviously has a lot of horse imagery, which is fitting for a joust. Point number 10. When Aerion pulls out his dagger with Dunk on top of him, that is pretty much where the fight between the two ends in the Hedge Knights. In the novella, Dunk at this point has hold of Aerion's shield and he uses it to knock the dagger out of his hand and then smashes it into Aerion's helmet until he yields. So novella Aerion never gets any stabs in on Dunk, and the only major wound Dunk suffers is from Aerion's lance, just like in the show. Point number 11. I won't go over everything that you see the other fighters doing in the background, but there are several notable moments, such as after Dunk pulls the lance shard out of his side, he looks around and you can see Humphrey Beesbury lying on the ground, presumably dead. Then we see Humphrey Harding falling from his horse after being whacked by a sword from a Kingsguard. So while Raymond later tells Dunk that both Humphreys died in the first charge, it appears the show actually follows what happens in the Hedge Knights, with Beesbury dying in the first charge but Harding only being mortally wounded and dying later after the end of the trial. I guess while Harding technically didn't die in the first charge, Raymond might have just assumed he did, since in the show he died during the trial, unlike in the novella. Speaking of Raymond, he is actually the one who knocks Aerion off of Dunk before then tanking a lance hit from his cousin, and later he tries to help out Dunk again by using his horse to knock over Aerion, but this then led to Aerion chucking his sword into Dunk's leg, so that ended up not being so great a move in hindsight. We see Maekar use a lance to take out Lionel's horse, so like father like son, I guess, though at least Maekar doing this wasn't dishonourable. And throughout all these glimpses of the other fighters, we never really get a clear view of Robin Riesling nor all of the Kingsguard. We know it was 2 of the Kingsguard who killed the 2 Humphreys, and the last Kingsguard faced off against Lionel. But towards the end, we only see 2 Kingsguard. Well, one for sure, and then the back end of a white horse for a brief moment. Most likely a Kingsguard horse, as the only other white horse on the field besides theirs is Raymond's horse, and by this point, he's not on it. But there is no sign of Robin and what he's up to, and even in the Hedge Knight, it isn't said what he's doing at this point. Going by the Hedge Knight, towards the end of the trial, the 2 Fosterways were fighting each other, and Lionel and Baelor were beating on Maekar just like in the show. But unlike in the show, Dunk also sees one Kingsguard carrying another from the field and the third down and out. In my opinion, I think that in the show, one of the Kingsguard ended up too injured to be able to fight, and Robin, still on his horse, fought the final 2 maybe Kingsguard who were also still on their horses, which would make more sense than the idea that Robin was somehow able to contend with all 3 Kingsguard at once. 2 I can believe, but 3 would be a big stretch. Finally, we also possibly see the moment Maekar caved in the back of Baelor's helmet, which, if so, is tragic because it happens after Aerion has yielded to Dunk. Point number 12. Along with this being a trial of 7, I also noticed a few possible references to the faith throughout this episode. First being Dunk seems to suffer 7 major wounds from Aerion throughout the trial. The lance strike, stabbed twice in the side, stabbed through the hand, jabbed in the back, sword in the leg, and stabbed in the eye. He then actually appears to die, only to be judged by the 7 and resurrected, which is a thing gods are known to do in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. Concerning the 7, rather than it being 7 gods, is actually one god with 7 aspects, the 7 who are one: the father, the warrior, the smith, the mother, the maid, the crone, and the stranger. And we see references and hints toward all these aspects save one throughout the episode. The father and warrior obviously being represented with all the fathers and warriors participating in the trial, but especially with Arlen, a father figure to Dunk who taught him how to be a knight, a warrior, and is the one who comes to him for his resurrection. The mother is referenced with young Dunk talking about staying in King's Landing so his mother will be able to find him even though she's most likely dead. Well, he didn't need to worry because she managed to find him Ashford to bring him back to life. The smith is represented by Steely Pate and the maid by Gwyn Ashford, and the stranger obviously by the deaths of the Humphreys and Baylor, but also with Dunk's apparent death. It's as the Septon says before the trial starts,
"May death sustain life."
The only aspect of the 7 not seemingly represented is the crone, which does make sense in my mind as the crone stands for wisdom, and where's the wisdom in holding this trial of 7 for an obviously innocent man? Point number 13. It probably wasn't intentional, but I like to think Dunk hit Aerion between the legs with his sword as revenge for Egg with all the times Aerion threatening to cut off Egg's parts. Point number 14. And with the death of Baylor Breakspear, Daeron's dragon dream prophecy comes true, as a dead Baylor, a dead dragon, falls on top of a still living Dunk. I guess the gods didn't find it honourable for him to join the joust, knowing the Kingsguard wouldn't hurt him. Though Robin saying honourable is show-only dialogue, since in the Hedge Knight it's actually Lionel who asks, and he says chivalrous rather than honourable. To me this seems like an intentional change to have the openly religious character ask if it is honourable, to directly imply the gods decided it wasn't and so punish Baylor. Now, fair warning to you all, I'll now be talking about the distant future for Dunk and Egg, events not from the novellas, but from the World of Ice and Fire. So if you don't want to be spoiled on this information, even though we most likely won't ever see it in the show, you can switch the video off now, as this will be the last thing I'll be talking about. And if you are going to be switching off, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Now, for those who don't mind hearing about the distant future of Dunk and Egg, what Daeron says to Dunk about the dream is the same in the show as it is in the Hedge Knight, but with just one small addition. He also mentions seeing a fire as well as a dead dragon. And as we learn in the World of Ice and Fire, in 259 AC, the tragedy of Summerhall occurred, a fire which consumed the castle and killed many, including King Egg and Lord Commander Dunk. Or did it? On the Decider YouTube channel, in a video called AKOTSK, stars Peter Claffey and Dexter Ansell craft their own puppets, Dexter seems to accidentally reveal insider info he received from George R. R. Martin himself that Dunk actually survived the tragedy of Summerhall.
I do know a bit about when Egg's trying to make dragons in the Summerhall, and then there's a huge fire, but we know from George, we don't know if that is exactly what happened. We know Dunk survives, but we don't know if Egg survives yet.
We don't know exactly what's happened, but let's just get this season 1 out of the way and we'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
So if that's the case, Daeron's dragon dream could actually be referring to this event, not the death of Baylor. And during the fire at Summerhall, King Egg fell dead atop a living Lord Commander Dunk, who then went on to escape from the burning castle. But if that's the case, why then do we not hear about Dunk at all after this, continuing on as Lord Commander of the Kingsguard? Well, many theorise that Egg's obsession with bringing back dragons and the impending birth of his great-grandson Rhaegar Targaryen, yes, that Rhaegar, brother to Viserys and Daenerys, and who Robert Baratheon slew at the Ruby Ford during the Battle of the Trident, were connected, with sorcery also possibly being involved, according to Barristan Selmy in the 5th A Song of Ice and Fire book, A Dance with Dragons. And what can be made out from an ink-blotted letter by Maester Corso of Summerhall mentions many gathered Targaryens, 7 dragon eggs to honour the 7 who are one, a warning from Egg's own Septon, pyromancers, and the substance wildfire, which all hints at something odd happening at Summerhall which caused the castle to burn down, possibly sorcery. Could this be why Dunk then vanished from history after the tragedy? After witnessing Targaryen sorcery at Summerhall and with the death of Egg, he chose to disappear and no longer serve the mad, tyrannical, enslaving, blood magic practicing, incestuous aliens who invaded Westeros with no respect for the people's history or customs.
We got a bit carried away there.
Thank you all, everyone, for watching. If you enjoyed the video, and I hope you did, give it a like to let me know. And if you want to see more, then make sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much again for watching. I've been Triple S, you've all been amazing, and I shall see you all in the next video.